What is up, Dynasty Leaguers? Welcome back to another DLF YouTube channel video. Today we're going to be running through a Dynasty one quarterback mock draft. I've done a superflex mock draft over the past couple of weeks, but I wanted to switch it up, go to the one quarterback position and see how this overall draft board looks. Obviously, the strategy is going to be a little bit different. We can see where the quarterbacks are going to actually go and where I would actually take one. Tight ends as well, where would they go? Running backs, wide receivers, all that fun stuff with a one quarterback draft. And I'm actually going to be picking out of the 1.03 spot. So I think that's actually a very weird spot to draft. We'll get to that whenever we get to that actual first round pick. But let's get right into the video. So here we are. This is our draft board using Sleeper. Like I said, this is a Dynasty PPR mock draft. And so we're just going to be running through and we can get this thing going here. With starting this draft off, because I have the 1.03 pick. So the first two picks were Dalvin Cook and Christian McCaffrey. That could probably be in any order, but ultimately that's probably what I would expect the first two picks to be off the board. So this is actually going to be a lot easier than what I thought, because here it would be basically for me, I'm going to be looking at the running back position. I'm looking at Kamara, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry. Those are kind of the options that I have here at running back. You might ask why I would not really go for a wide receiver right here. And that's just because, to me personally, I think a lot of the top wide receivers are all very much the same. I think that you can get one, especially if you're picking this high, you could potentially get someone very similar to Justin Jefferson or an AJ Brown down at the 210, even in a one quarterback league. So that's why I ultimately don't really want to start off the tier at the wide receiver spot. I want to be in the middle or try to close out some tiers at the running back spot if I'm picking from this position at the 1.03. So that's what I'm going to do here. And a lot of people would probably expect me to just go with Jonathan Taylor. That's kind of the consensus pick here. But I'm actually just going to, kind of throw in a wild card here. And I'm taking Saquon Barkley. That's just because I really, really like, obviously I'm a Penn State fan, but obviously, Saquon Barkley is fantastic. Yes, he missed a lot of last season because of the ACL injury, but I think we forget how good Saquon Barkley was before the ACL injury in 2018 and then half of 2019 before he got hurt there too. Not worried about the injury proneness or whatever that is. I'm not concerned about that at all. I think Saquon Barkley is going to come back, just as good as he was before. And we're talking about a true workhorse running back, a guy who can be like Christian McCaffrey and, go over 1,000 yards rushing and potentially 1,000 yards receiving in this New York Giants offense. He's a very key cog to that offense. He helps Daniel Jones out a lot, and I think that he's going to be fantastic for fantasy football. Plus the fact that he's still only 23, 24 years old, like that is still very, very young for the running back position, and I have no problems whatsoever with anybody behind him trying to take over or get into some sort of a committee or whatnot. So Saquon Barkley for me, I'm going to take him there over Jonathan Taylor at the 1.03, but I don't mind Jonathan Taylor either. You could definitely go that route there, but basically what I wanted to impress was I'm probably taking a running back there at the 1.03 spot. So we're back up again at the 210. And like I said, this basically has happened where you can still get a fantastic wide receiver at this 210 spot. The only wide receivers that went were Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf, Devontae Adams, AJ Brown, and Stephon Diggs were the top six. So you can still, look at wide receivers here, guys like Calvin Ridley, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, DeAndre Hopkins. A bunch of those guys at wide receiver are fantastic to really, build out your core and see where you want to go with those wide receivers. Running backs still look fantastic, obviously, as well, too. Antonio Gibson, Joe Mixon, Austin Eckler, Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders, Travis Etienne. That looks very solid as well. The tight end position, I think, is really interesting because I'm not really looking at them yet, but none of the tight ends have come off the board. And I really want to see ultimately where those guys actually start going off the board at. But I'm going to go to the wide receiver position because my ultimate strategy for Dynasty is to get a really, really solid elite stud running back, fill out my wide receiver core so I have 4, maybe 5 very solid options that allows me to plug and play wide receivers every single week, not have to worry about that position. And then ultimately, that allows me to have a shallower wide receiver core and depth chart, which allows me then to have more running backs on my team and kind of stream my RB2 position after my stud running back. And if I happen to find, some good value on another running back as my RB2, then that's good as well. But that's not ultimately really what I'm forcing myself into doing. But that's just kind of my overall strategy. So I'm looking at the wide receiver position, and I think that it's going to be fantastic for me to lock in Calvin Ridley, a guy who I believe is already borderline top 5 at the wide receiver position, and is absolutely fantastic. Obviously, no Julio Jones. Kyle Pitts comes in and is still going to kind of take that replacement role, I think, overall. But Calvin Ridley is locked and loaded wide receiver 1 on the Falcons. And to me, I think he has a fantastic opportunity to repeat top 5 wide receiver production again in 2021 and beyond. So I love Calvin Ridley there to lock in my top wide receiver 1 position. Here at the 3.03, I'm just going to do the same thing again. And I'm looking to still stay young. So I think my choice here is between CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase. I think ultimately what I'm going to do is go with the pure upside in Jamar Chase. I think that's kind of where we're going to be going towards. And CeeDee Lamb obviously went the pick right after me. But what I really like there is, and the decision for me was, we're debating Jamar Chase as the expected or more prototypical wide receiver 1 in terms of size, collegiate production, all of that stuff. He gets paired back with his college quarterback in Joe Burrow. He can come in and be that wide receiver 1 in the Cincinnati Bengals offense, even with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd still there. CeeDee Lamb is perennially going to be behind Amari Cooper until Amari Cooper's not there. Yes, that offense is still fantastic. Dak Prescott is still fantastic. But I'm not so sure that the ceiling for CeeDee Lamb is as high as what people think it might be. And that's why we're drafting him there. But Jamar Chase, in my opinion, that ceiling is definitely there. Like, Jamar Chase could just come in and be what AJ Green was in the Cincinnati Bengals offense, just a few years ago when he was pulling in 80 for 12 or 1,300 and, 8, 9, 10 touchdowns. I think that's the pure upside for Jamar Chase. And I think that upside is a lot higher for Jamar Chase than it is for CeeDee Lamb. And I'm willing to take the gamble on that upside being there because he's my wide receiver 2 behind Calvin Ridley. So I like that opportunity, not to mention the fact that Jamar Chase. So 410 here, we're up. Let's see what we got going on here, because this has now become a mix of quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, and then the tight ends have started to come off the board as well. Kyle Pitts going at the 4.01, Darren Waller at the 4.03, and George Kittle actually 2 picks after our Jamar Chase pick. Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson both went as well as the quarterbacks 3 and 4. I'm not really looking at quarterbacks right now. I want to see where I can get to in terms of being able to potentially stream that position with a couple solid options more in the QB 12 to 15 range and see where that is, even though I really, really like having that opportunity to just kind of have an elite quarterback and be done with it. I want to still do a late round quarterback strategy with, dynasty 1 quarterback leagues. But I still want, to obviously solidify that position and not have guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick or Drew Lock or Sam Darnold at that spot. I still want to have good quarterbacks, but we'll get to that here very soon enough. 410 though, I'm in on these wide receivers. The running back position, it still looks fine. Chris Carson, Javonte Williams is there. I love Javonte Williams. I'd actually be very curious to see if he makes it back to me at my 5.03 spot. And then basically after that, there's a massive drop off to me in terms of workhorses and guys with 1-year opportunities and stuff for 2021. So I'm going back to this wide receiver position to see what we have going on here. And I think that I really, really like taking the shot on Keenan Allen at this point, because that gives me some production. But even though he's an older, aging veteran, Keenan Allen to me can just solidify that wide receiver 2 with Calvin Ridley. Wait for Jamar Chase to kind of come into his own and come into, be a fantastic. And then that allows me to kind of move on from Keenan Allen and have Jamar Chase coming in here. Even though, Jamar Chase could just as easily put up 1,000 yards this year, and I have 3 fantastic wide receivers, and we're good with that. So I'll take Keenan Allen there because I love him. He's fantastic. And I find that to be kind of a value. I know he's 29 years old, but man, I love me some Keenan Allen. So I'm very, very happy and comfortable with that one. 5.03, unfortunately, Javonte Williams got picked, the pick right after me. Looking back on it, I probably should have taken Javonte Williams at the 4.10 and then waited for one of these wide receivers to come back. Keenan Allen might have made it back to me at the 5.03. I might have just picked the wrong player to make it back to me at 5.3. But this is where we're at right now. And I think I want one more wide receiver before I start hammering out these tight ends and running backs. Actually, I beg to differ. I'm going to take TJ Hawkinson here at the 5.03, a guy who I believe is a solidified top 5 dynasty tight end. And ultimately, if we're talking about volume, TJ Hawkinson is going to get volume. He could be another Darren Waller this year just out of pure necessity. There's really nobody else for Jared Goff to throw the ball to. Tyrell Williams and Quintez Cephas, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and, Brashad Perriman. Like, they're not really getting it done. TJ Hawkinson, though, 8th overall pick just a couple years ago, can get it done. And I love that opportunity there for me to draft him at the 5.03, especially a whole round cheaper than Darren Waller, after Mark Andrews as well. I think that's fantastic. And I love locking in and solidifying my tight end position and going with TJ Hawkinson there. And it still allows me to still take a wide receiver here because there's still some fantastic options at the wide receiver position because that position is just so deep. So here we got guys like Tyler Lockett, Robert Woods, Juju Smith-Schuster, Cortland Sutton, OBJ, Debo, Rashad Bateman, Visca, and a whole bunch of guys down here that I'm not really all that curious in. So we're staying up here in the top, and we're going to see where we're going with this because I want to lock in and get one more wide receiver, I think, in these first 6 rounds to really solidify that wide receiver core. And then maybe I can get some later round guys for some high upside variants or, some aging veterans as well, too. There's a couple guys and names that come to my mind in the 11th or later rounds that we could potentially be hitting. Man, this one's hard because I really, really love Robert Woods. I love Robert Woods a lot. My only problem with that is I feel like that's adding a little bit too much age to my team because Keenan Allen is also 29 years old. Calvin Ridley is 27. Jamar Chase is the youngest wide receiver I have as a rookie. But, man, can I pass up on Robert Woods? I mean, I would pass on him for Juju or Cortland Sutton would be the only other 2 options that I have, and they're both 20. Juju's 24, Sutton's 25, maybe 26. So I will let you in on a little secret here in terms of what's going on in my mind. So I made this a start 3 wide receiver and then 3 additional flex spots. So this is a deep starting lineup, probably deeper than what the stereotypical dynasty 1 quarterback league might actually be. But because of that, I need more production and I need, I'm not really going for the age or whatnot. And I'm not really worried about that ultimately in terms of we're getting into my flex positions here. So I'm getting into Robert Woods. I'm going to take Robert Woods and we're going to call it there. Maybe one more wide receiver falls back to me. Juju Smith-Schuster fell back to me. That's fantastic. I'm just taking the value there. We're 100% in on Juju Smith-Schuster. He has been a top 20 wide receiver in 3 of the past 4 years. The one year that he didn't was that year that he was hurt, and Mason Rudolph was also the quarterback, so that's gross. He was a top 10 wide receiver to end the year last year, basically from week 5 on, was top 10 along with Deontay Johnson. I think that they can basically, even with the addition of Najee Harris, just run it back to this Pittsburgh Steelers offense and be very, very valuable for fantasy football still because Big Ben is just, he's going to throw those short little routes, and Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be a PPR guy, and that's fantastic. He's my wide receiver 5. I can move him. I can wait and see what he does in free agency next year. Maybe he goes to a better situation with a better quarterback. That's all fine and dandy, and I can just see what's going on with Juju Smith-Schuster, and because he's still only like 24 years old. He came into the league that young. So I love having Juju Smith-Schuster there as a buy low pick at the 7.03 in 1 quarterback leagues as my wide receiver 5. That is awesome to me. Not even to mention the fact that I could probably, if I even wanted to, and we get to a point in the season where I'm, trying to compete a little bit more, I could move one of these wide receivers for a running back. That's always an option. This is just a mock draft, obviously, so I don't have the benefit of doing future moves. But, you can always just stack that value and then trade for, your needs later on. I like that a lot better because if you're debating between Juju Smith-Schuster and Ronald Jones, like who would you take in a trade right now? If I had Ronald Jones and I offered you Rojo for Juju Smith-Schuster, what are you saying to me? You're saying, nah, I want Juju. Get your Rojo out of here. You're saying the same thing with Chase Edmonds, with Michael Carter, probably with Trey Sermon as well. Like it's not even a debate that you're taking Juju Smith-Schuster over any of these running backs. So why would you pass on him in a startup draft in that same light, So that's where we're at right now. But here we are at the 8-10. This is going to be a little bit better and a little bit more so where I start really looking at the running back position, hammering out the running backs, looking at the quarterback position still. And I see a lot of guys that I really, really like as some high upside plays at the quarterback position that I can maybe pair with more of a productive veteran as well later on down the road. So I like what I see here at the quarterback position, and I'm really wondering if I should just pull the trigger on one of those guys and see if we got one of them coming back at 9.03 or not, or if I should look at the running back position and see what we have here. Yeah, so I think the ultimate decision here that I'm going to go with at 8-10 here, I'm going to take Trey Lance. He's my quarterback 2 in this class behind Trevor Lawrence. Ultimately, would it surprise anybody if he outperformed Trevor Lawrence for fantasy football just because of Trey Lance's ultimate ceiling with his rushing ability? I don't really know how the Jaguars are going to use Trevor Lawrence. Like, obviously, he's going to be fine. He could even be great. But Urban Meyer really scares me. I feel like he's just trying to bring this college system into the NFL, and we've seen that not work in the past. And I don't know if he's ready for the NFL. Like, this is just really weird, and I don't think I want to be a part of this Jaguars offense. Trey Lance, however, is with Kyle Shanahan. He has the rushing upside. He has fantastic weapons in Debo, Ayuk, George Kittle, and that running game is still very good no matter who they put back there. And obviously, all those guys can catch as well. So I love Trey Lance, and I love taking him as the first quarterback that I can have on my roster, because then what I can do is I can stack him then with another productive quarterback later on down the road, like Ryan Tannehill, Tom Brady, guys like that, and just, have one of those guys as my actual starter while Trey Lance just kind of sits and waits and incubates and gets going, later on down the year. Or Trey Lance could even be the starter week 1. I'm actually very all for Trey Lance being the starter in week 1. So that's all just kind of how we see. But I like to have a couple options in one quarterback startups and one quarterback dynasty leagues at the quarterback position, because obviously bye weeks, but injuries and, just streaming the position and doing all that as well. So Trey Lance there at the 8-10, I think is awesome. I love that. Guy should probably be a first rounder in superflex leagues. So you're getting that kind of value this late in one quarterbacks. Absolutely love it. So here at the 9.03, I'm just going to start hammering out these running backs. We're going to start with James Conner. I think he's a fantastic play if you need him as a depth piece. I think he's going to have a pretty good volume and workload with the Arizona Cardinals. Kenyon Drake left 250 carries almost last year going to the Las Vegas Raiders. So James Conner comes in. I think he inherits a good amount of that. And obviously injuries and whatnot can do whatever with James Conner because he is kind of injury prone. But if that's going to be the workload that he gets for 12 games out of the year, 10 to 12 games, and that's the workload that we're talking about with James Conner, I'm very happy starting him as my RB2 with the rest of my core and roster that I have in that slot and being totally fine with that type of workload and production that he's going to give me, this late in the draft as well. So I'm very, very happy with that, and definitely very happy that I can get a guy with that type of workload. I made a YouTube short about James Conner and talking about him and why I think that he would be a really good buy low for competing teams. I view this kind of as a competing roster. So this is just, me taking my own medicine here. So that's just it. So here we are at 10-10. Still looking at the quarterbacks. I don't think we're in quarterback territory yet for my Tannehill Brady situation. That might be at the 12-13 turn. So we're just going back to the running back position here. All right, I'm going to take Tony Pollard here, back up to Ezekiel Elliott. Obviously, he can do a lot on his own as well, even with Zeke still on the field. So I like Tony Pollard as a high upside priority backup running back. It's fantastic, and I can just, obviously, if Zeke goes down, I'm plugging and playing Tony Pollard every freaking day of the week. And I know it really sucks because he comes in here as my, my final flex position, but we can do all that, and we can work with that for sure. So here we are at the 11.03 spot. The wide receivers are still, they're fine. It's whatever at this point. And I think I am going to take one wide receiver, just one more to finish it out. And here, this is kind of based off of what Ryan McDowell was talking about on the DLF podcast yesterday. But they talked about values and targets that they have in the 11th round or later in one quarterback dynasty startup. So if you missed that episode, go check that out. It's fantastic. They each just named one target each per round from rounds 11 through 20. And Ryan's was Antonio Brown in the 11th round. So I like that, and I think that I could definitely play him over Tony Pollard. Just have a boatload of wide receivers here in my starting lineup, and I'm very happy with that. And I'm basically done. I'm done here at wide receiver. I'm just going to start hammering out these running backs. I'm going to finish out with a couple tight ends and a couple quarterbacks as well, because here at the quarterback position, I waited too long. I probably shouldn't have gone with Antonio Brown. I should have just taken Tannehill and Tom Brady, but you guys can not make that mistake in the future. But if you wanted a guy that you can just kind of start and plug and play, you're looking at guys down here like Kirk Cousins would be very good. I think Daniel Jones would be fine as well. Matt Ryan would be fine with Kyle Pitts kind of taking the Julio Jones role, so I don't think he really misses all too much in terms of production. So I like those three guys as veteran options that you can pair with a rookie in Trey Lance or Justin Fields, and wait for those guys to start doing their thing in the NFL while you're playing the productive veteran as well. here in the 12th round, I'm just going to, go back to the running back position. I'm going to take Gus Edwards. Fantastic offense and rush first offense in the Baltimore Ravens. If anything happened to J.K. Dobbins, that is entirely Gus Edwards' backfield. So I love that. I love that opportunity. Here at the 13th round, I'm going to take Jamal Williams. Again, priority backup to DeAndre Swift. If anything happened to Swift, Jamal Williams' backfield. But Williams can still be fantastic on his own as well. A lot of people are making a lot about him being the A back and DeAndre Swift being the B back, to the bigger back to DeAndre Swift's Austin Eckler and whatnot. And if that's the role that he's going to be playing, he's a value in the 13th round already. So he shouldn't be falling that far. So I really, really like grabbing Jamal Williams there. And then, here at the 14th round, I think I'm just going to close it out and get my quarterback with Kirk Cousins. I only did 14 rounds for this mock draft just to keep it short, and the video still pretty fine. So that is ultimately going to be the team that we got there. So we got Saquon Barkley, Calvin Ridley, Jamar Chase, Keenan Allen, TJ Hawkinson at the tight end position, Robert Woods, Juju Smith-Schuster, Trey Lance, James Conner, Tony Pollard, Antonio Brown, Gus Edwards, Jamal Williams, and Kirk Cousins. So what I would do from here, if you have, 10, 11, 15 more rounds of this dynasty startup to go through in this one quarterback, I'm continuing to hammering out the running back position. Just if you can make a case for a guy getting on the field at any point, basically, I really like them. Guys like Elijah Mitchell. I know Latavius Murray probably already went here. He did not. Wow. So Latavius Murray, 100% for sure. Same thing. If anything happened to Kamara, that's Murray's backfield. Just a whole bunch of backup running backs. You can talk about guys like even, Devontae Booker is the main backup for Saquon Barkley. You can get Wayne Gallman for the San Francisco 49ers. A bunch of these other backup priority running backs that you really, really want on your team if one of the starting running backs goes down. Just hammer out those running backs. Don't even touch the wide receiver position if you follow what I did here, and I took 6 wide receivers in the first 11 rounds. Don't even touch wide receivers later on down the road. To me, that's not a good value pick there. Because you can be playing some of these other running backs and such as injuries and stuff go on throughout the actual season. So I'm looking for that running back position. Quarterbacks, I already have Kirk Cousins and Trey Lance. Maybe I add one more as like a super high upside or super high ceiling type of player. But I'm very happy with those two. And if I ended up, not going the rest of the draft without drafting one, then I'm totally fine with that as well. Obviously, I need another tight end or two. So you can be looking at the tight end position as well. Grabbing a couple guys, Hayden Hurst is still out there as well. I know he was on the list for late round targets from the DLF podcast yesterday. And just some other tight ends as well that you could be looking at just to have a backup to TJ Hawkinson, or maybe a couple options in case TJ Hawkinson were to get hurt for you to kind of stream from. That is how ultimately this team played out and how I would approach the rest of the startup draft for this particular one quarterback league. So this was very, very fun, and I absolutely love doing these mock draft videos. So if you guys have any ideas on what you would like to see from this mock draft video, maybe specifically more one quarterback, more super flex, what position you want to see me go out of, maybe if you want me to test out an actual strategy, I can definitely do all that for you guys. So drop a comment down there below. And with that all being said, guys, we will catch y'all later.